Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 6th regular meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. First item I have tonight on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes of the Council meeting held January 16th. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Powell. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next item is the approval of the agenda, and the motion is that the February 6, 2017 Council meeting agenda be approved. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Burden. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. We have 3 delegations this evening. And the first delegation is the Parksville Downtown Business Association Pedestrian Wayfinding System. And we have the Executive Director, Pam Bottomley, and Michelle Jones, Treasurer of the PDVA, to request the City's Council support in implementing Phase 1 of the Pedestrian Wayfinding System. Good evening and welcome. You have 10 minutes. Make yourself at home.
Thank you for allowing us to come tonight as a delegation. The purpose of our presentation tonight is to follow up on the November 10th, 2016 annual joint meeting that the PDVA board had with City Council, in which Stephen Sinclair presented a pedestrian wayfinding system for Parksville Downtown. The PDVA has just finished our 10th year of operation. Doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it has. And as you're aware, we're funded by the commercial property owners within the business improvement area. And some of you may not have been aware of when we first started, we focused on beautification and cleanup for the first 2 to 3 years, where we wanted to make sure that the downtown was clean. And we still do some beautification on an annual basis. But more recently, we've been focusing on marketing. And now we would like to move into more implementation of the city's 2006 Downtown Revitalization Plan. And pedestrian wayfinding system is a key element of that plan. Some backgrounds on this project specifically is that in 2014, we conducted research into the current best practices in pedestrian wayfinding. In 2015, we presented those results to our members and to Council. And in 2015, Council agreed to contribute $7,500 of its 2016 budget toward hiring a consultant to move the wayfinding project forward. And that report in November of 2016 was the result of that study. And the total cost of that report was almost $40,000. So the city paid $7,500 and the PDVA paid the rest. The Downtown Revitalization Plan was adopted by Council in 2006, but was never budgeted for implementation. And we just wanted to point out that every member that sits on Council right now supported downtown revitalization in their campaign. And so we're hoping that you support downtown revitalization now. We've been working with our consultant over the last couple of months, and we've come up with the estimated total cost to implement the downtown the pedestrian wayfinding system is going to be in the order of $300,000. That would be a full system for all of the BIA, and we're asking that the city commit to the entire system at this time and phase it in over the next 3 years. So what we're asking from the city was that you would contribute $210,000 or $70,000 a year in the 2017, 2018, and 2019 budget. One of the reasons why we're wanting to do it in 2017 to 2019 is our current mandate ends in 2019. So we want to, we'd like to have this done by the time our current mandate ends. The PDBA board has budgeted $35,000 in our 2017 budget right now for pedestrian wayfinding, and the board has committed that they will budget the same for the next 2 years after that if the city elects to proceed with this project. And this is in addition to what we've already spent on pedestrian wayfinding for the last 3 years. So we're trying to move this project forward as quickly as we can. We would like to propose that the PDBA provide the project management for the project and move it forward, because we think we can maybe move it a little bit quicker than if the city staff, if it gets slotted in with other projects that the city staff may be working on. So we think we can maybe prioritize it on our table a little bit quicker than city staff when they have all these other projects that they want to do. And again, we're just asking that the city commit to the system and that we proceed with implementation as soon as possible. That's it. If there are any questions.
Just before I ask members of council, you're asking in 2017, 18, and 19, what's the amount?
70,000 per year. So a total of 210,000 over a 3-year period.
I'll come back to that point later. Members of council, Councillor Oates.
Thank you for your presentation. What's the total cost of the project?
300,000.
300,000. Okay, thanks.
Any further questions from members of council? Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. I know when I saw it in November, I was really happy to see it. I think it would benefit the city of Parksville as well as the businesses downtown. Now, it's my understanding that that it's going to be, you can extend it past the downtown core. Is that correct?
Yes, it's made to be expanded, and while the expansion may not be exactly the same, because the consultant thinks you could expand on it with another theme, so it could expand all the way to the city limits and into the RDN if somebody wanted to fund it.
And so I do agree that when we did pass the downtown business, the rebite, there was no dollars attached. And I have to acknowledge and commend you for the work that you've done on this to get us to this point. I said in November that I really appreciated and liked the design and where you were going with it. At that time, we didn't have numbers. And so the $300,000, that is the complete design, or is that lower the design?
That is complete design from now. So it would be full design, detailed design, tendering, installation, or manufacturing the signs, installation. That's it. So it would be beginning to end. So it would be from this point to full installation of a system.
I'm not going to correct you. I just wanted to add that where possible, existing posts and whatnot would be used for support and whatnot for the finger posts that you saw in November. So a lot of it is using what's already in place.
Just through the mayor to the CAO, is it possible for them to do the design that our engineers would normally do? Is it possible for them to take on that task within the city?
Possible for them to take on the project, but they would have to do it to city standards. So the city would have to have an approval of the design.
Councillor Patterson, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to one of our city staffs, I'm not sure who, but the current signage, or even the PDBA could probably answer, but the current signage that's in the downtown core, in the light green format and everything. That was done by city staff, is that correct?
That was done in conjunction with us and city staff. We worked through with city staff to come up with the design, and then we paid for the manufacturing of the signs, and then they installed them.
So I guess my follow-up. So my follow-up is, were they made in the city of Parksville by
No.
the city, or they were bidded out, I guess you could say?
They were produced locally, but not by city staff, or? No, not city staff.
Thank you. Just one further follow-up, sorry. When you're talking about the money in that requesting from the city, are you looking at that in kind as well for city staff to implement and put up the signs?
We thought, I mean, that could be part of the 300,000, because the 300,000 budget we were given includes installation, but we didn't know if that would work into the city's budget, so it could go either way, and we could discuss that. We'd also, what I forgot to mention earlier is we'd like to go to some outside funding and some grant applications.
Thank you. That'd be my next question.
But we need the city on board to do that. We can't just go for these
Absolutely.
grant applications on our own, because it's city infrastructure. So we need the city to be on board before we can. We've identified 2 funding sources that it might be possible right now. So I forgot that. Sorry.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you. So I would appreciate, rather than me trying to take notes and decipher what it is you want to do, it would have been better if we'd had something saying the money was going here, there, or everywhere. I want to go back to the total amount. So the total cost is $300,000. That is for phase 1.
No, that's for the entire system over a 3-year period.
Because the delegation request is to support in implementing phase 1.
If I may, I can answer that. At the time we applied to appear, that was in November, and we hadn't fully solidified our approach. In discussions with the board and myself, we realized that if the city didn't commit to the system, we could end up with a couple of signs here and a couple of signs there, and not a system, just a bunch of random signs, which would be a waste of our money and everyone's efforts to date to have it look like that.
Yeah, so are we talking about signs just in the downtown business area here, this complete project?
We're talking about the system that was presented to you on November 10th in that document. That's the whole system.
For the sake of the folks that weren't there on November
Sure.
the 10th and are here tonight,
Yes.
perhaps you could explain it for them.
It's a detailed hierarchy of wayfinding signage that gets people out of their cars to their destinations and walking around our downtown core. As you can see on the slides, that's the best practices. Those are rationale for any community to do a wayfinding system. There's been one that we talked a lot about in November in Canmore was an example. They're common. They're not common on Vancouver Island because things tend to happen a bit more piecemeal. They are proven in the documents that we subsequently sent to the study on the impact in Edmonton. Generally speaking, you can count on an 18% increase in retail sales from effective wayfinding. When we presented to you in 2015, we presented details on how communities all over the world have benefited from a cohesive, logical hierarchy of signs and assistance to get visitors happy, comfortable, and circulating out of their cars and walking around. Does that help at all?
No. That's the theory. What I want to know is where the signs are going. The question was, are the signs being confined in the downtown area, or is this for the entire signage all across the city? When we talk about our existing signs and the ability to use those, possibly parts of those, I'm wondering, does this 300 grand also contemplate the replacement of the sign up at Springwood Park, for example?
It does
Or is
not.
this just downtown?
This is, our mandate is the business improvement area, and we're funded by the business owners within that. So this is for the BIA, this is for Parksville Downtown. The system is completely scalable to other neighborhoods, niches, communities, and can effectively carry any other community's branding, should they choose to proceed. But this is just the BIA.
Okay, that does help. So, just to comment, I'm sure that I'm sure that this is what the PDBA would like to do, and I appreciate being reminded of our commitment to downtown revitalization. But I'm sure there's probably other ways it could be done as well. You're talking about a 3% tax increase to fund this. Right now we're looking at a 4%. That's what we're forecasting in our plan. It's going to be in our agenda later tonight, where we're forecasting 4% tax increases. Were we to go ahead with this, I guess that number changes to 5. That's just fact. Those are just numbers. Those are easy, verifiable. That's math.
Make a comment. I have to add, Councillor Salter, do you have a comment? I'll go to Councillor Salter. You want to answer now?
I was just going to say that's if we're not successful in getting other grants. It would, $70,000 a year. I don't know if that's 1% for you or what it is, but yeah.
Okay. Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was actually my question. How much, you're saying you will be going for these grants. How much are these grants? What's the dollar amount of these grants that you are going to be going for?
Well, we had identified two funding sources. One would be the RDN's Northern Economic Development Fund, which has an intake in the spring. They have a $50,000 budget, so we could apply for, some of that, as well as going to Ice-T before they shut down, and maybe because they like these kind of projects that are ready to go and that are tangible. There's probably other sources out there. The city may know of some other sources of funding. There might be some gas tax funding that could go towards signage or something of this, but we're hoping that the city staff may be able to help identify. Ideally, it'd be nice to, if we get funding and it's 1/3 of the cost, then everybody's costs are reduced. But until the city's on board, we can't actually apply for grants.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking for numbers, though. So if you're looking for grant dollar, what are you expecting? What numbers you've got to have a number. You can't be, I'm just hoping to get some money. Because we're looking at, for us, we're looking at 200,000 at least from the city. So if you're going to get grant dollars, that money's going to be applied against what the city would be assisting if we supported this. But for us, we really need to have our numbers. We can't vote on something hoping for something else in future. We kind of need to have something a little more concrete with regard to the numbers.
I guess from where I sit, what we're looking at is for the city of Parksville to fund its own downtown revite plan. We've been working the plan for 10 years. We want to move this. This is a key component of that plan. You would not be giving us any money. We'd be working with you to move this piece of municipal infrastructure forward. We're not asking for money. We're asking for the city to commit to its plan.
Councillor Burton.
So, sort of answered my question. Thank you. In terms of the city committing to your plan, and I absolutely believe in seeing a change in our downtown core and seeing a change in the appearance of our downtown core. And I did campaign on downtown revitalization. What does committing mean to you? You've heard the queries around numbers, and so...
I would like to hear, yes, we want a system, not that we want to put up a couple of signs a year. We're working toward a system. We want to work with you as the downtown property owners, and we're going to help you bring in other partners so we can get her done.
Okay. Follow up, Mr. Ray. So, in terms of grant writing, I'm familiar with most of the groups that you've cited. What are they, particularly ICE-T, because I think that's probably your best bet, what kind of language are they going to be looking at in order to be able to put forward a grant?
Well, I believe that the key words here are economic development, municipal infrastructure support. We have data from all over the world on what these systems do to increase retail sales. We have a challenging retail environment. They also boost tourism. They make tourists much more comfortable, see way more of the town than they would have if they didn't know what was where or how to get there. I believe our colleagues at the Tourism Association who were not, Blaine wasn't able to be here tonight, are very supportive of this approach. It's not, it's best practices. It's not new technology.
I guess I'm trying to...
Yeah, I think I understood what your question was, is you want to know what City Council has to say tonight so that we can go to ICE-T and hopefully get funding. Do you need to commit money, or do you need to just say you're committed to doing the system? I think that's what you're asking.
It is what I'm asking, and I guess I'm looking for a way to provide you with the support that you require to go forward with your grant writing applications without committing any money at this point in time, because I don't think that we can do that right now. But I think we can commit to the project.
So how do you commit to the project without, I know, hard?
Well, you know, I think we've all already committed to the 2006 downtown revitalization plan.
I'm gonna jump in here if I can.
Good.
And I'll get to you in a moment. When we met on November the 10th, I know that the figures there were very embryonic and they were very, very high compared to what they are now. But frankly, at that time, I was under the impression that the time frame was going to be longer. It wasn't going to be 3 years. It was going to be 5 years, maybe 6 years. And obviously, because of the costs that were identified at that time, you know, Councillor Oates is right. $70,000 is awfully close to a 1% tax increase. And we're in the process of developing a budget for 2017 now, and we're almost there. So following up on what Councillor Burden was saying, we would have to have another look at our budget to see if there's any maneuverability in that budget to reduce some things and whatever. But how, I guess my blunt question, how important is it to you that it be, first of all, I don't think anybody on council would want to commit to funding in 2019, because this won't necessarily be the council, or the entire council, that's going to be sitting in this room in 2019. So that's kind of a tough one. But you know, how flexible would you be if we were required to go beyond a 3-year term to pay for all of these things? Or is there any flexibility there? I don't know.
Under our bylaw, we can't commit to anything beyond 2019 because we have to go for a renewal in 2018 to go beyond, or 2019 to go beyond 2019. So that's why we selected 2019, because we're kind of stuck there. And our bylaw says we can't make any financial commitments beyond the end of our term in our bylaw. So we're kind of
We're kind of both in the same boat. Okay, Councillor Powell, you had some questions?
Thank you, Worship. I don't necessarily have questions. I have comments. I remember when I first ran for council in 2005 is when the Revite plan came out. And I remember that people were pretty excited about that, and it seemed to get shelved, except where the PDBA was formed. And it was my understanding then that the PDBA was responsible to initiate that plan, the downtown Revite. And so when you talk about the money, the $70,000 for 3 years, it's not giving you money. It's an investment in the city of Parksville. You know, I remember when those signs went up at the end, at each end of the downtown core, they were nice. They were classy. People would come and say, boy, those signs are really nice. This is what identifies Parksville. This isn't a handout. Like, I don't know why people seem to think it's a handout. It isn't. We've given handouts to different organizations to increase economic development. Where's the handouts or the money or what you guys need to do this for people who are trying to invest in their community to increase economic development? I think that somehow it's got crossed with this is giving you money. We're not giving you money. This is us investing in what the job that we gave you to do to start with. And so I am pretty frustrated right now because it is a $70,000 increase, per year, just less than 1%. But it's an investment. We invest in infrastructure all the time, and we don't call that giving money. And so, from my perspective, this is a no-brainer. This is more than just signage. This is kiosks. This is connecting stores, the park. It gives direction where outlying areas are. This is what defines Parksville. And so I support it. I think it's a no-brainer. And I don't understand why there's such pushback on it, because this is an investment in what we set you out to do in 2005.
Well, thank you, Councillor Powell, but nevertheless, we've got a $70,000 request that we didn't have before, and we're working on a budget now. So, Councillor Oates.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not ready to dismiss it, but I'm not ready to sit here and make a decision for a 0.7% tax increase with the lack of detail that I have here. So if you want to come back and say we're going to put signs here, there, and here, and this is how we're going to do it, I'd be happy to consider that. I think that would be us doing our due diligence. But to, I get a one-page thing here about supporting phase 1 of pedestrian wayfinding, and by the time the delegation is done, it's a request for a 0.7% tax increase. I can't in good conscience make that decision no matter how much I support the project. And I did support it when I was there in November. I did like what I saw there. I thought it was good. Sticker shock has taken over for me now, I'll be quite honest with you, right? And with respect to handouts, the only people I've heard refer to it as handout are those of you that are in support of it. I've never used the word handout. I haven't heard any of my other colleagues here use the word handout, so I'm not sure where that's coming from. And I'm not going to be blackmailed into my support of the downtown revitalization is determined by my support of this project. I think I can support downtown revitalization and not support this project. But I'm not ready to say whether I want to support the project or not support the project until I have some more details. Again, we got a 4% tax increase. If we were to approve this, that would be a 4.7% tax increase. I don't think there's anywhere in British Columbia would have a tax increase that high. So that's a problem that we have to face, because I know it's great for the downtown, but the rest of the city is paying for it. And that's why I'm reluctant to pass a motion on this or support a motion on this. I would be more than willing to look at it afterward with more detail, so that at that time, when the decision at council is made, we can in good conscience look at the people that are paying the freight and say, we made it based on the best information we had. Thanks.
What I'm going to suggest, Council, we haven't finalized the budget yet by any stretch of the imagination, and I would like to propose that somebody make a motion that we go back to end this conversation tonight, that we go back and look at the budget in great detail to see what kind of flexibility we might have. Anyway, that's my suggestion for now. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. And although I appreciate where you're coming from with your suggestion, I think that it's February and we need to make some decisions earlier rather than later. So I have a couple questions towards staff again. Councillor Oates has very much talked about the tax increase, and I understand as much as anyone that I have residential and property that I have to think about. When we consider what a 1% tax increase is, and I'm going to ask our CAO what that works out to for the average taxpayer.
It's usually, I think it's I can't be exact, but I think it's around $50.
So when we think about what our tax increase, and because we talk about money all the time, and that it's, you know, not having that extra coffee in a week that makes up the difference that we're looking for the average taxpayer. I try and simplify things as much as reasonably possible. So a 0.7% tax increase is an additional maybe $40 the taxpayer. I think that our taxpayer would be quite okay with the revitalization of that. And I've always asked for a 1% tax increase in our budget that looks at strictly revitalization in Parksville. So that's where my thoughts, comments, and everything are.
Councillor Burton.
I'd like to see us, never mind us, I'd like to see you go away with a sense of a support that will allow you to go forward with your grant writing proposals. I'm not sure that we need to be discussing dollars and cents at this juncture, but I think that we can figure out a way to provide you with the support that you require for this project, and I think it's a good project. Without getting into the minutiae of the money at this point, I know we're going to have to get to that decision at some time, but I'd like to see what other funding sources are available before we have that discussion.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just need to, I do disagree that the money is the minutia. I think it's actually a very large part of this whole conversation here, and I think it's required. My feeling was that money was required, or support that, yes, there will be money forthcoming so that they could go for their grants. So I think that's a really important piece with regard to their what they spoke to today. For me, I also need more information. I also I'm not neither yes nor no on this. I don't feel that I have enough information that I could speak to why I said yes or no at this point. So I need to hear more than what I heard tonight to make a decision like this, because I don't believe they're just looking for us to say, yeah, we support you. That's politicians do that all the time, right? And they forget about it when the time comes. I believe that you're looking for a financial financial support. If I'm wrong on that, maybe you could let us know that you don't need us to support you financially tonight so that you can move forward.
A couple things, because I've been listening here, and as far as Councillor Oates' comments about needing more detail, some of this money is going to provide the more detail to identify exactly where each sign is going to go, exactly what it's going to look like, what information it's going to have on it. You can't do that from the level that we're at now. We can't tell you exactly where each sign is going to go. That's part of the design and implementation process. So we can't give you that information tonight. As far as Councillor Salter goes, I think we would love to have a financial commitment tonight, but if we can't at least get some, I mean, the fear I have is that we get a commitment tonight that says yes, we're in support of this system, go out and get your funding, and we go out and we get funding, and it's for 1/3 of it. Then we have to come back, and then if you guys say no, then we're stuck again. So now it's difficult, because we've spent a lot of time and energy on this project in the last 2 years, and we spent a lot of energy on the downtown revite plan in the last 10 years, and, you know, we would really like to move it a little bit farther forward. We're doing little things here and there. The street signs helped, you know, the banners help, but we need an overall cohesive system. And I don't know what you are comfortable giving tonight, but I mean, I know the commitment to support the implementation of a system while it lets us do our grant applications, which we need the city's help on. You would have to be joint applicants for that grant application. And then if we do get grants, then you know, I guess that's where the rubber hits the road, and you have to say yes or no. But, you know, that's where I'm at.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Worship. I would like to put forward a motion, we'll either make it or break it, that the City of Park shall financially support the pedestrian wayfinding system up to $70,000 a year based on budget deliberations.
Could you be more specific per year? Are you talking about?
Up to $70,000.
The years, because I'm not going to support 2019. I don't know if I'll be here.
Let me finish. 2017, 2018, and 2019.
We have a seconder for that? I have a seconder by Councillor Patterson. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Rhodes.
Well, same question as before, even more so now after hearing the latest comments. What are we getting for the three? When I asked the question, what is the total cost of the project? The answer that was provided was $300,000. Then further explanation revealed that, well, we don't know where the signs are going, because that's what part of the money you're paying is going to do, is going to go do these. Now, it seems to me that that is a wide open door for it to come back again and say, well, now that we've done this, it's not 300 grand, it's so much more. I know it's inconvenient, but I mean, the people want to know what their money is being spent on.
I can answer.
They really do want to know what their money is being spent on. What I would like, what I would have, the motion I would have made, if there's a motion on the table now, was that staff request a detailed breakdown of the what you needed the $300,000 for. We keep asking the questions here tonight, and I'm getting more confused about what we get at it at $300,000. I thought when you say $300,000 total cost, that means project done, signs are up, people are going by, waving, thinking, smiling, is happy. But that's not what I heard. I heard that this is going to require more studies and that, and which could conceivably cost us more money. Again, I can't reasonably put my hand up in support of this kind of money without, when I walk out there and someone says to me, what's the money being spent for? I can tell them the concept, but I can't tell them where the signs and that are going to go. And I think people would want to know that. So don't misread me that I'm against the project. I'm just being diligent with the money, because it's the taxpayers' money, and that's what they elected me to do, is to be diligent with that. And yes, I did say I was committed to downtown revitalization. I didn't say that I take the whole 4% tax increase and put it towards downtown revitalization. So, you know, the lack of detail is mind-boggling for a request of like over $250,000. It really is.
Mrs. Bottomley.
May I respond? The report, the very detailed report that was presented to you in November, contains a map of major, minor decision points and a selection of a very detailed hierarchy of how these, and a logical system. Each component, each element was costed out. For example, there's 152 banners downtown, so I know how much those are going to cost. We've budgeted for those this year. So sure, we can sit down, we can take a look at that map of major and minor decision points, give a rough cost on what would be best at that location. For example, we've identified information kiosks for the gazebo at the foot of McMillan and in the community park. We have 3 gateway signs. We have an alternate design and fabrication approach that, to the one that was presented to you in November, that would make use of the existing supports. So there is a lot of financial information already available. We can't cost it out to the penny because we haven't done the messaging. What do we want to put on those finger posts? What is the best place to put? You'll recall there's trail talkers. Well, you can see it on the slide here. Trail talkers, finger post signs, lamp standards were used for some signage. No, as refined as we are is to the point where we know where the major and minor decision points are. Those have been defined. Next step is to flesh that out, refine it. The ballpark figures that were given to you are based on what other communities of our size, with our demographics, our information needs, our geography, have spent. But they're based on the detailed tables that were at the back of that report. It's a very detailed report. I thought if there's insufficient information in that for you to take a decision, be happy to try to do a better job of that. But really, I think the PDBA is at a point where we really do need to hear that you're committed to funding your plan. Because we can only do banners so many times, right?
Councillor Burton.
I think, obviously, from listening to the conversation around the table, the sticking point is money. And you ask if there would be a better way for you to present this. I think maybe presenting the money up front might have softened the blow a little bit. We have a number of requests coming forward on a fairly regular basis for money. And in my mind, it's not necessarily about money at this point, although I'm certainly sympathetic to what Councillor Oates has to say. $300,000 is a lot of money. And even if it's over 3 years, it's still a lot of money given the other requests and the other demands on the city's tax system at this point in time. I'm keen to see the results of grant applications, okay, because I know that those can make a big difference. I support the project. I think it'll make an enormous difference, particularly with regard to tourist traffic moving in and about our community. Like the look of everything that I've seen so far. I have looked at the report that was developed that looked at the other communities that have done these kinds of projects. I'm trying to think of a way to make an amendment that brings in the grant funding without tying your hands, and I haven't been able to come up with anything yet, because I think it does tie your hands.
The other thing I want to remind Council is the motion talks about 2019. I won't support a motion that provides money in 2019 because we don't know who's going to be sitting around this table. And I don't think that you can, Mrs. Comas, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you can engage or commit a council to spending that kind of money in 2019. I mean, they may agree with it, but at this point in time, can we commit the funding for that time?
You can approve it, but subject to whatever that council wants to do, and it does its budget. So if it wants to slash
it's like a
taxes,
conditional offer on a house. Yeah, it's not worth anything. Okay, Any further comments? We're going to call the vote. Any further comments? Councillor Oates?
So the vote, the motion is for us to provide $70,000 a year for each of those years, up to $70,000. No, this is not. No. If we commit tonight, we're not going to be half pregnant when we're done. We're committing to 70 grand. The up to or whatever, however you want to put it. Once the motion, once the majority of council says 70 grand, yes, we're voting for 70 grand. Is there a way that we could put it in there $70,000 in kind that would allow the proponent to write their grant applications? I don't want to see it die, right? I'm gun shy. I'm scared to vote in favor of 0.7% tax increase here. You may find that funny, right? But I don't. I take it very, very seriously, right? So.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote. Councillor Powell, last time.
Point of order. As the person that put the motion forward, I would like to go through you to the CAO. Is there a way to include in kind in there, or is it important to include in kind in there?
Council is certainly free to make it a combination of financial and in-kind contributions. However, the problem with that is that we don't know what in-kind contributions looks like, and whether there are, at the end of the day, any kinds of in-kind contributions that we can make. The type of contribution that we may be called upon to make. If I could make a suggestion, is that council refer this motion that you've made back to staff to our budget discussions. Without Mr. Butterworth here, it's difficult to say whether we would need a full 0.7% tax increase in order to accommodate this, because at this stage we are still going through year end. We don't know how much of a surplus we are going to have. We don't know whether or not there are any types of massaging we can do with respect to our capital program that might free up some money to kind of ameliorate the impact of the $70,000.
Councillor Oates, you had your hand up first. Then
I'll move referral to staff for comments from our Chief Financial Officer. I don't want this to die here on the floor tonight. So I'd like for...
We have a motion on the floor.
Motion to refer is always in order.
Okay, that's right. Okay. Yeah, and I think that the budget deserves another look at it. We're not, we've got a fairly large amount of money in that budget, so. You second that? Okay. Any further discussion? No, we're not on the motion. There's no discussion. Thank you. That matter will be referred. And thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for what? Okay. Okay, the next delegation that we have is not Larry Gardner. You are not Larry Gardner. I want to make that very clear, because I know Larry Gardner. So would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So I'm Megan Larson. I'm a solid waste planner with the Regional District.
Okay, great. Welcome. And you can talk to us about solid waste management. Go right ahead.
All right, so thank you for your time this evening. I'm going to give you some of our Stage 2 highlights of our solid waste management update process tonight. So for those of you that don't know, Stage 1 of our solid waste management plan update started back in 2013. So over 2013, 2014, we took part in reviewing the existing waste stream management. That involved a number of technical reports as well as a full waste audit was completed. At that point, our advisory committee was formed and we started our process. We're now in Stage 2 of the process. Our advisory committee has assessed a number of ideas and options that were presented through feedback from a number of our key stakeholders, as well as a number of newsletters that have gone out to the public with regards to what's happening with the plan. some region-wide surveys. We're currently meeting with a number of key groups and businesses, such as yourself right now, to let them know what our short list of preferred options is at this point. So we're here consulting to get feedback on what's included in our draft of our Stage 2 plan at this point. Stage 3 will happen later this year. At that point, we'll be looking at setting timelines for implementation of a number of the options presented in the solid waste management plan, as well as the full financials that will go along with those options. At that point, the RDN board will approve our solid waste management plan update, and we would seek minister approval of the plan as the requirement through the BC Ministry of Environment. From 2017 to 2027, so it's a 10-year plan, would be our implementation and monitoring of our success. So where are we now? Back in the 1980s, we've been at this a long time, we were looking at 1,084 kilograms per person per year going to landfill. So at that point, we had 0% waste reduction. By 1990s, we had cut our waste reduction in half, so we had 50% less waste going to the landfill, so around 550 kilograms per person per year to the landfill. By 2003, so our previous solid waste management plan, the committee and our board supported the goal of zero waste. By 2014, which is similar to where we are now, we are at 347 kilograms per person. So overall, we've achieved at this point a 68% diversion to landfill. Just as an FYI, province-wide, the average is 520 kilograms per person per year going to landfill. So provincially, we're doing exceptionally well, and we've reached targets that many other areas haven't. What's being proposed by advisory committee is a goal of 90% waste reduction in 10 years, so by 2027. And what that would look like is 109 kilograms per year per person going to the landfill. So it's a big step. How do we get here? We reviewed a lot of the different options. So this is just a long list of some of the different programs and reports that were presented to our advisory committee. We only have 10 minutes, so I won't go into full detail tonight, but all of these reports are available online.
I just want to point out that Larry Gardner took 3 hours, so you're doing a great job.
So what has our committee decided? Defining zero waste was a big goal of the committee. The new plan update commits to Zero Waste International Alliance's definition of zero waste and really reinforces the concept behind the zero waste hierarchy. So highest and best use is reduction, reduce, reuse, recycle before looking at other alternatives for emerging technologies. How are we going to get to 90%? It is a big goal, like we said. We feel that 6% of our reduction moving forward will be through collaboration and work and advocacy with other governments and manufacturers. We have an exceptional network of EPR programs in the province of BC, but continuing to support and advocate for stronger EPR programs will help us get a little bit further down the reduction road. 6% will come from enhancing existing education and enforcement programs. Through the process of examining our existing systems, we realized we have some really great programs and landfill bans in place, but we need a bit more education and enforcement to ensure compliance with those programs. The last remaining percentage, so we'd get about 80% by there, is we need some new regulation and authorities granted by the province. And through those, we can achieve 10% more reduction. So what does it look like? The plan commits to education and enforcement across all sectors. So how that splits down is some enhanced education and enforcement for the commercial sector. As I'll go into a bit more detail, the commercial sector is a big focus of our plan for a number of reasons. We would be looking at enhancing existing public education for zero waste with a more focus on adult education. We currently do a lot with schools and students, but we feel that there's a gap in terms of reduction in zero waste habits that we're missing for adults in our community. And we'd also be looking at enhancing the education and enforcement for construction and demolition waste as well. Where does our greatest reduction opportunity lie? This is a snapshot of what our commercial sector looks like. And when we talk about commercial sector, we're talking about schools, institutions, and businesses. There's still a lot of material that can be easily recycled and composted. So that's why we're targeting the commercial sector with a lot of our program options. What do those options look like? So looking at the commercial sector, these are some of the new regulations that we're proposing to introduce through authorities with the province. The first one is separating at the source. This would be a waste source separation regulation as a potential tool to help to ensure recyclables and compostables don't end up being landfilled. This proposed regulation would require all existing and new commercial, institutional, and industrial businesses to have recycling and composting collection. This option would include multifamily apartments and condos, as they're not currently included in the residential collection programs provided by the RDN or member municipalities. So think about similar programs to what you currently do at your house, if you're a residential single-family home, would be everywhere throughout our communities. The second authority that we're looking at introducing new legislation around is getting help or licensing waste haulers throughout our region. This would help to ensure that every business or multifamily building has a recycling and food waste composting program. This would not only help prevent waste from being hauled out of region to less expensive private landfills, it would also help ensure that we take responsibility for our own garbage by making sure we recycle or compost it locally. It could also offer an economic incentive for private sector to provide more waste management services locally, improving convenience for composting and recycling facilities for customers. An eye on the future, so the program doesn't end once we've set our goals. We would continue to monitor our waste disposal and measure how we're doing in terms of achieving these goals. We would continue to seek opportunities to reduce waste and look at emerging technologies as they present themselves. This may include working collaboratively with other regional districts, as well as collaborating with other local governments. And that's the short story.
Well, the first thing I want to say is, if your director can hear me, I don't want Larry Gardner. I want Larry Gardner to make presentations like that instead of giving us a 3-hour presentation. I'll talk to Larry. Thank you very much. That was a very concise and very thorough. Any questions for the delegation? I'm going to go with Councillor Patterson and then Councillor Burden.
Thank you, Your Worship. When you talk about other waste companies and that they can actually, can they dispose of somewhere else besides the landfills that the RDN has?
Yes, so currently we have no legislative authority to dictate where a hauler has to haul to. Out of convenience, most of them do haul to us, and through our waste management facility licensing program, we do have a good idea of where waste goes in our region. Due to our proximity to the U.S., there is a risk of, with the dollar dropping, waste going out of our region for cheaper disposal. Generally, when it goes out for cheaper disposal, it doesn't get separated. So it's simply recycling, composting, and regular garbage being disposed of in a landfill.
Councillor Burden.
A couple of years ago, there was a proposal to look at a waste-to-energy project to Duke Point, I think. Has there been any further thought? I know it was rejected at the time. Is there any further thought with regard to that?
So the proposal that went through or was being talked about out at Duke Point was actually Metro Vancouver looking for waste energy facilities. I believe that's been tabled for now and was not supported by Metro Vancouver, so that's not currently something being looked at. Waste energy has been discussed through our advisory committee, but there isn't much appetite for it right now. We have fairly low tonnages to put together a cost-effective system, especially looking at continuing to reduce our tonnages. Those kind of technologies don't make sense for the capital investments required.
Yeah, we've made, when I talk about we, I'm elevating to the RDN, we've made great strides, but we need more provincial support, as you pointed out in your report. The technology there from the studies and analysis, cost-benefit analysis that the staff have done at the RDN level, the energy side of it is not quite cost-beneficial at this point in time. Pardon me? Yeah. So it's, but the strides are great, and I think that the direction that we want to take over the next 10 years, we'll be top of the heap, and I mean the garbage heap. And I guess apartment buildings too are something that we've got to tackle, because that's really difficult right now, and we need legislation, I guess, to do that. Councillor Patterson again. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Powell, then Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. At the second or third slide, there was something for subsidies, eliminate subsidies. Can you go back to that slide? Oh. Yeah, what subsidies are we talking about?
I can't speak specifically what it's talking about. This is directly from Zero Waste International Alliance. Basically what it dictates is that we're not providing cheaper disposal rates to encourage large loads coming in. Our system would simply encourage recycling and composting and other forms of diversion first, rather than supporting cheaper disposal options.
Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'm not sure how to phrase this, so just bear with me for a little bit. So businesses and other apartments and such in the city of Parksville, they have the choice of having a waste company come and remove their waste from dumpsters and such. Whereas the RDN or businesses in the RDN have the RDN that picks up. No?
No, I believe, and I don't quote me on this, Town of Qualicum provides some collection services for businesses in their downtown district. The regional district does not directly provide service for businesses and or households. We contract out for our curbside service, and anything in the commercial, institutional, so school districts, is all done by private haulers. That also includes multifamily condos and apartment buildings. So almost all of that is provided by private haulers throughout our region. That includes City of Nanaimo, District of Lantzville, and City of Parksville. And I'm not sure if you guys provide collection. I know we do your curbside single family. So throughout the region, anything that is private business or condo apartment buildings is provided by private haulers. So we have very little, other than our landfill bans, of enforcing what actually happens in those organizations.
Follow up.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this slide is a great one. That's the one I took a picture of. And so when you say enlisting waste haulers as licensed partners and doing it right, so would you hope that they would have kind of bins like that they are separated, that it's not just one big disposal type unit?
Yeah, I don't know if our highlights document got included in your agenda. I have a few extra copies, and I can distribute those electronically as well. That goes into a bit more detail. The actual draft of the solid waste management plan goes into much more detail, but it's dry. These are two separate authorities that we're asking for, and we feel that together they can be really strong. So separating a source would be one thing that as regional district we would be able to enforce, and same with our municipal enforcement. So if a building didn't have the ability to separate at the source, then we could ticket and enforce them. The second part of it is that we feel that working with our waste haulers and licensing them would enable them to better deliver their services as well. So one of the things that we hear from our waste haulers is that landfill bans are great, but they can't, it's difficult to enforce through their businesses. Because loads get mixed, it might be this business that's causing all the problems, but by the time everything gets mixed, it's below a 10% threshold where we can ticket. So there's some advantages to licensing the waste haulers. One, and the much longer Larry Gardner presentation goes into some of the economic incentives that we're proposing, and we'll be further consulting after our solid waste management plan is updated, of looking at differing tipping fees and actually charging waste haulers. So any waste that's generated in our region, aside from at the household level, would be charged a fee. So that means that even if the waste is going outside of our region, we're still generating some revenue to continue to provide enforcement and education services. But that's the 3-hour presentation.
Thank you. Any further questions? You know, with all due respect to my sainted mother, she used to say, don't ever get into garbage, there's no future, but I disagree, there's a future in garbage. So thank you very much. And you can tell Larry for me that this is the kind of presentation I'd like to see at the RDN, not his 3-hour presentation. I'm kidding. Thank you. Thanks again. Thanks for coming. Our next presenter is a Montreal boy, Sean DePaul, former Montreal boy. And I have to highlight that because I'm a former Montreal boy. It's gonna
Always a Montreal boy.
We're going to talk now about the relocation of the Bay Avenue pump station. So welcome, Sean, and over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just let me... So I was here last year in October, where I was presenting the Regional District Nanaimo's wastewater DCC program. One of the projects within that program was the Bay Avenue pump station. Back in the fall, I talked about the program, and coming back here to give some details on the project. We, at the time, were working on a feasibility study for some upgrades of that facility, and I'm here to present on that today. So I'll go over background, existing site conditions that we are dealing with right now, talk about the feasibility study and the next steps. This map is just to show where the pump station is. The pump station is located within the city of Parksville. It accepts wastewater from Parksville and pumps it to the French Creek Pollution Control Center for treatment. The pump station was built just about 40 years ago in 1978. It serves, as I said, Parksville and homes and businesses. Approximately 85% of the wastewater from Parksville travels through this pump station. It was upgraded in 1997. We put backup power, so in the event of a power failure, we were able to run the pumps and to ensure we didn't have any overflows. And then in 2003, we had a smaller upgrade where we replaced a few of the pumps with larger size pumps. Now we're at 2017, and one of the things we've been dealing with over the years is the accessibility and operational challenges at the plant.
I walk by it every time I go down to the beach because it's at the base of my street. So I know it's tough. So here's actually, these are the stairs to access the beach and as well access the pump station. So steep bank, it's accessed by 3 flights of stairs, no vehicle access, so operators need to walk down, bring tools, equipment, and so on. We have equipment there that can be in excess of 1,000 pounds. The only way to get that equipment there is with the crane truck. The crane truck boom has to be fully extended, and as well it has to navigate around power lines. So quite a sort of a hazardous operation. And as well, the pump station is vulnerable to coastal flooding. It hasn't been flooded, but it is within that floodplain area and is actually below the recommended construction levels if we were to actually rebuild the pump station now. Additional challenges are the pumps now are becoming oversized, clogging frequently with debris, and the wet well is now becoming too small. So when we do maintenance, we shut down the pumps. We have a period of time before that wet well's filled,
and a risk of overflow. Likewise, if we have any major equipment failure, which we don't typically, but if we do, we have a limited time as well to address those issues before overflow. We do not have any historic overflows documented at this site, but there is always that risk, and that increases as flows increase in the area. So in terms of the issues that we're dealing with, we looked at the actual site, and as well, this shows the area outside of the site. So we wanted to make sure we sort of examined all options available, and we used sort of that area as a study area, recognizing that the pump station was constructed where the collection system flows all the effluent currently. So the infrastructure lends itself to that, best to that location currently, but we are dealing with the constraints I mentioned earlier. So the feasibility study, these are some of the things that looked at. We looked at, we did a site assessment criteria that we looked at was accessibility, construction costs, impact on the public in terms of any of the work, additional sewer infrastructure requirements. So the existing location, like I said, doesn't require significant additional. If we were moving up and down the beach, it does, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Environmental impact, what is the impact of any potential future sites? Archaeological considerations, vulnerability to effects of climate change, and then utility servicing. This pump station requires 3-phase power, so there's that was considered as well. So these are the options. We looked at 3 relocation options, and then a 4th option, even though it's actually not referred to as an option in the study, was the existing site. So we'll start with Rushton Avenue. Rushton Avenue is to the north of the existing, and sorry, E represents the existing pump station. So to the north is Rushton Avenue, and this one has a cost estimate of $4 million. Some of the issues are that work it's required foreshore work, and as well there's a relatively deep excavation required for the wet well, and there's an extensive gravity sewer required. And actually, what I'm going to do just quickly is go back a slide if I can. Sorry. But just to point out here, if you go from our force main runs north along the beach, so from the existing pump station, we would have to run the gravity line along the foreshore to go to the new pump station, and then we'd connect into the existing force main infrastructure. So that would be required with this option. Next option is Sutherland Park to the south. And this one is the most expensive option that we looked at. It's $4.5 million. It does have the highest anticipated impact. This will be required to construct road access to the site, and there will be extensive gravity and force main. So we'll actually have to, from the old pump station or the existing pump station, run a gravity line to the new location, and then run the force main up to the old pump station and reconnect. So we'll actually be running a pipe both directions with this one. This does have some. It is in a lower area, so it does have a greater vulnerability to effects of coastal flooding. However, of course, would be constructed in an appropriate area. This other option, we didn't. Again, we're just following what the studies referred to it. It did look at the existing site that's currently on the foreshore. And this one has a $4.3 million cost associated with it. There will be work required on the foreshore, so it will have it is saying a higher environmental impact, but it will be lower than the other two. This will require construction of an access road down to the plant. Now, the only way you can do this is, and this is just purely looked at it from a very high level feasibility, but it would require the purchase of the property either to the right or the left of the existing pump station. It wouldn't address the limited wet well capacity, and it does have the vulnerability to coastal flooding. The third option is at the end of Bay Avenue, current site there, just up above. So earlier in the middle, it's sort of in the background in the middle of the photo, are the stairs that we had an earlier image of. This would be up from there in the area of where that chain link or the chain is located. This would be, it's on the same parcel, it's part of the road right away. It does have vehicle access, it's right at the end of the road. It would, though, however, require quite a deep excavation for the wet well, close to 7 meters. It would, though, work as well with some of the existing infrastructure. So the existing wet well would still be utilized and would sort of reduce the requirement of the size of the wet well in this location. It does have a lower environmental impact than the other sites. This is an outline of where the existing pump station is and the proposed new location. The proposed new location is sitting up close to 3 meters higher and in very close proximity to the 2 adjacent homes. So that is something that will need to be considered as part of the design. Our consultants, and actually I hadn't mentioned Coors and Associates from here from Parksville, were our engineers that did the feasibility study. Their recommendation was the option 3 relocation up at the end of Bay Avenue. And then beach access as part of that, I would mention as well, we would maintain that beach access to the site, and much of what is seen down there would be removed. And then next steps, we'll be putting an RFP out shortly within the next couple of weeks for pre-design. We will as well, sometime in 2017, consult with the bordering properties. The completion of the pre-design will give us a cost estimate for moving forward and more conceptual information on what exactly the pump station will look like once it's constructed. Detailed design will start in 2018. Because this is within the city of Parksville, we will require a building permit that we will apply to sometime in 2018. And then we're looking at an open house sometime before construction. And that will be an open house for public, that we'll take out to the public with construction then planned for 2019 into 2020. Any questions?
Thanks very much. I'm going to go first because I live there. What about I guess the neighbors would have to be consulted. Is there a lot of noise with that machine? I've never heard too much noise.
There is a genset, which is an internal combustion engine. There is the ability to enclose the engine, or we do enclose those engines, and there is soundproofing. They do make noise. They will be tested on a regular basis, and then when there's power outages, they will be running. So there will be noise. We do have these pump stations elsewhere in the regional district, here up in Qualicum Beach, and then down in the city of Nanaimo, in close proximity to neighbors.
What about so you'd say the beach access would remain pretty much as it is. You just have to have a path that circumvents the site and go down the steps that are there now.
That's the current plan. However, we likely won't need a chain link fence for the existing site, and we don't need there's a genset, there's a container on site which contains the genset. That will no longer be required, so access may be changed, but at this point in time we aren't considering improving anything. The idea would be we would maintain access and allow access to continue through there.
I would presume that your biggest problem is going to be if there's any noise, what the noise level will be and how that can be mitigated. Yeah. Okay. Members of Council, any questions for Mr. DePaul? Councillor Burden, Councillor Oates, and Councillors.
Just a quick one around bank stabilization. That's a pretty steep bank, and you're moving a fairly heavy unit to the top of the bank from the bottom of the bank. Are you going to do anything further than what's there now?
As part of the pre-design, geotechnical investigations will be a significant component of that. Yes.
Councillor Oates?
Thank you for your presentation. I just want to confirm a couple of things I thought I heard. 75% of the entire waste of the city of Parksville goes to that existing pump station now? Is that what the number you said?
85.
85%. That's a majority, isn't it? And that was built in 1978. So this new pump station that's being proposed, irrespective of the final location that's decided, what's the life expectancy of that?
The life expectancy typically there's different components of the infrastructure, but the concrete components of it can be 70 to 80 years. And so the relocation is not necessarily an issue of failing infrastructure. It's an issue of current location.
And so I guess the feeling is that because it would be the changing of the location long term would be cost effective, given the logistics of getting people down there and equipment down there and that sort of thing.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Salter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you for your presentation. I do have a few questions. So you're going to be going with the Bay Avenue location and the cost of that is approximately $2.5 million. Is that the correct one we're talking about?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And so is this the one that also you said there were properties bordering either side? Would you be looking at requiring those properties, or is that the other one?
We won't require there will be no requirement for the purchase of the properties, but they will be in close proximity to those properties.
Those properties will be in close proximity. And then with the wet wells, you said you're going to utilize the old wet well, so are you not going to need a second, or you'll use a second but a smaller wet well?
Correct. There will be 2 wet wells that will be part of that pump station. So one will be the existing, and the other wet well will be below that site that I identified within the road right away.
So will you be pumping product from one to the other, or not?
No.
Will it be flowing?
It'll flow by gravity.
It'll flow by gravity?
Yeah.
Not through a pipe?
Through a pipe. Yep.
Okay.
Through a pipe underground. And I should note one thing. This is what I'm referring to here is we've only done a feasibility study. So once it goes through pre-design, some of these things may change. There may be a better approach moving forward. But the idea at this point in time is that yes, we'll utilize the existing wet well, have a pipe that will connect by gravity to the new wet well,
second one,
where the pumps will be located.
Oh, okay. So that's where the pump. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to use the same genset?
No, we're going to be using a new genset.
You're going to get a new one. Oh, okay. I didn't have that. And you say you're going to require a building permit. And so with the open house, that's in order to just explain what you're doing down in that location.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
I just want to add there are 4 or 5 houses that are extremely close, very, very close, from Dogwood down to where the facility is going to be. I think there's 3 houses on one side and 2 houses on the left-hand side. Very, very close, extremely close. That'll be a challenge.
Yeah, it might. I had indicated the 2 adjacent properties, but it might be worth putting out a little bit further. And the idea is when we're going to pre-design, to hear, what to let people know what we're doing, but as well to hear some of their concerns as well.
Councillor Salter, you have another question, another comment?
It's just with regard to the genset and noise, though. My thought is if you were using the old one, that might be a consideration. But if you're getting a new genset, you're likely going to be getting. Noise may not be an issue.
We'll be able to control the noise in terms of what we spec to the supplier.
Councillor Oates.
Just one just for clarity for myself here. So the location will be determined at the pre-design stage when we do consultation, or are we making a decision on the location here tonight?
No, this is just for information. The pre-design will. We've identified the location that we will be moving forward with pre-design, and the pre-design will then provide some cost estimates and some sort of high-level design
for a specific location.
That's correct.
And so who picks that location?
That was the location that was recommended in the feasibility study.
But there's 3 here. So why are they called options if one of them's been picked?
So here, I'll just... one more. Actually, it's back a few ones. Sorry. So yeah, we looked at the 3 different options, and the recommendation in the feasibility study was that we do option 3, which was up above the existing location.
Okay. And that will, at the pre-design stage, that's when public consultation will take place?
We were going to do it following detailed design, the open house.
Okay, thank you.
But sometime during pre-design, we were going to meet with the adjacent owners.
That was the part. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you, Sean. See you again. Take care. Drive safe.
Thanks.
Everybody, you want to leave that with us? Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Council, we're moving on to reports. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not moving on to reports. We're moving on to correspondence. We have one piece of correspondence tonight, and I need a mover and a seconder to receive the correspondence. I have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Oates, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? We're just receiving it. Opposed? Nobody's opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to reports. Mr. Squire, this is a report on implementation phase 6 of the ERWS project. No, I'm not. Oh, I'm sorry. No, my sheets are not in order. So I'll look and see here. Hold on a minute. I have reports from Mr. Squire. So it's Mr. Russell. And this is a consideration of proceeding with a notice of development variance permit at 838 Sanderson. So I need a mover and a seconder for the 2 recommendations. Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Oates. Mr. Russell, would you please give us the background on this issue?
If I may, Your Worship, as detailed in the report, the applicant is proposing to relax the property line setback from 7.5 meters to 3 meters adjacent to Island Highway West to facilitate the placement of a house and other buildings on the subject property.
I drove to the lot and had a look at it. Makes sense to me. Any questions for Mr. Russell? Councillor Oates.
Just confirmation, because I'm interested, I'm interested when new properties are being developed within existing neighborhoods. I do note in your report there that the relaxation would seem to provide consistency with some of the existing properties, so it wouldn't stand out if we were to grant this variance request.
If Mayor Worship, through to Councillor Oates, just a small point of clarification. The other properties in the vicinity are new also. There's basically a whole lineup of properties in that as part of that same subdivision. And just through their orientation, this is bringing the setbacks in line with those other lots.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Russell? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. All right, now, Mr. Squire, I need a mover and a seconder to receive the project implementation phase 6 report. Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Oates. Mr. Squire, would you please give us the background on this issue?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. As you know, this is an information report. And we are currently finished the last phase, phase 5, as we call it, the tendering for the future water treatment, water intake, and Topbridge Reservoir transmission main. It's now complete. The next phase of this is going into construction. This is a significant community project, and once complete, the community's water system will ensure high-quality water, safe water that will exceed Canadian drinking water guidelines, and will be sized to handle water demands for future generations. This project, as you're well aware, has been in the make for over 5 years now, and planning started with the completion of the Arrowsmith Dam. Over the course of the last 5 years, the following has been accomplished. We established the Englishman River Water Governance, which is a joint venture between the City of Parksville and the Regional District of Nanaimo. We've determined the best location for the new intake, the best type of water treatment technology for the Englishman River water source. We've also obtained approval for the change of works application to move the intake from the current position intake where it is right now to a upstream location just upstream of Highway 19. We've determined the best type of intake, which is a side inlet. We've had ongoing consultation for the last 5 years with Department of Fisheries and Oceans. With that, there's local First Nations consultation, obtained a $6 million grant through Small Communities Fund. We did go through a rescoping work. The actual treatment size was reduced from 24 million liters per day to 16 million liters per day. And then we had a fairly lengthy holding period of the project until we got public consent in the form of a referendum to borrow monies for the project. And then through that, we progressed the design through preliminary design, detailed, and then tendering. So on January 24th this year, the ERWS Management Board awarded the contract 1 as we call it, for the intake water treatment plant, Topbridge Park Reservoir to Napa Projects Incorporated in the amount of $21,181,194 plus GST. And also authorized staff to award the supply of the membrane filtration equipment to H2O Innovations in the amount of $3,720,298 plus GST. Going forward, the construction work is expected to begin in approximately 4 to 6 weeks. The first stage of construction will primarily involve the excavation within the City of Parksville Operations Yard and trenching for the underground utility construction. The expectation is that the project will be completed by the summer of 2018, and the construction formal schedule will be confirmed at the construction kickoff meeting.
Thank you. Any questions from member of council for Mr. Squire? Councillor Powell, Councillor Salter.
Worship, through you to the Director of Operations. So thank you very much for your report. I wonder if you could just speak to the $3,700,000, and it says here additional items for water treatment were encountered, such as secondary treatment for primary membranes and additional centrifugal equipment for sand separation. So is that something new that we didn't expect, or could you just clarify that, please?
Yeah, certainly, through your worship. This is pre-purchase of equipment, so this is the full membrane equipment, including all the sand separation prior to the membranes. We felt that pre-purchasing the equipment obviously would save the city monies. If you're actually adding it as part of the full contract, well, then you're going to get markup on top of that. Typical markup is like 10%. What you want to do is, with this type of technology, first of all, determine what is the best technology for the Englishman River, and we found out that's membrane technology. So then you go out to what are the best vendors out there for that technology, and we went through a proposal process for that and got pricing on it. But not only you're looking at pricing, the overall bottom line price, but you're looking at life cycle factors. You're looking at serviceability, reliability. This actual membrane, one of the attractive features other than the price, because they did come in at low, they will accept other membrane vendors, whereas the others, if you're buying a GE product, you're getting the GE membrane. And then when you go to replace it 10, 15 years from now, you have to go back to that vendor. So it is proprietary in that means. Same with PAL as the other treatment that we looked at. With H2O systems, they have a variety of their racking system is flexible enough that it will accept. So in 10, 15 years from now, if one of those other membrane suppliers does have a better product for a better price and is more economical, we can go to that product instead of getting fixed into that company. So that was one of the things we did look at. So serviceability and reliability. Then what you do once you retain that vendor, you actually design your plant around their product. So they're working with our consultants in building the water treatment plant. So we had to have them essentially engaged ahead of detailed design, and then we completed the project in that means. So that's what the full amount, the $3 million amount is. Yeah.
Councillor Salter, and then Councillor Burden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm just looking at the grant application for the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund that you submitted the request. Did you submit, or whoever submitted it, was it for the, if that grant is approved, would it be the $7,300,000, or would it be a portion of that amount that gets divvied out to many different requests? How does that work?
Through your worship, through the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund, we submitted the $7 million is the full grant amount that we've applied, for the whole project, different aspects. We had to essentially qualify what we could. That would be, as you know, we did receive $6 million grant through a different funding intake through the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund. We actually had to specify the additional works and quantify it, basically, so we're not double counting the grants. Yeah.
Councillor Burden.
So, in a previous discussion around budgets, there was a shortfall with regard to this project of $3.7 million. Is that the membrane showing up in a different budget year, or and it's being purchased earlier? Help me out.
Yeah, certainly. Through your worship, at the previous ERWS budget meeting, I believe it was back in September, late September, we had our latest cost estimate come in from the detailed design, which was just complete, and it showed that we essentially were underfunded for the budget we did have. So when I went back to the board, we established a budget that we felt would be suitable rather than coming back to the board after tender and asking for money at that point. Every time we progress through preliminary design to the detailed design, obviously you're getting into the nuts and bolts essentially of everything. So you're counting every little part and you're getting a more refined estimate. What we found, there was things in there that were not accounted for originally, that were just part of the 25% contingency. But as you get into it, obviously you're getting a more accurate reflection of what is actually needed for the design. So essentially what I did was identify a proper budget at that point in time. There were costs in there because the project was on hold for over a year. So with inflation, and there's all the other costs with the concrete that wasn't expected as well, that weren't originally encountered for. So what we have now is a price that is under budget, and we have sufficient funds to build the project.
I have a question regarding, we're going to do the intake location this summer, or in late June, the new intake location?
Yeah, there are restrictions on the construction of the intake, and that fits within a fisheries window, so it's in between July, not exactly the date, I believe in the middle of July to September, given low flows and the type of fisheries that are in the river at that time.
I guess my question is, do you think we're going to have any low flows with all the snow that's in the mountain? We may not have any low flows. Okay. All right. Thanks. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Receiving, thank you. That's carried. All right, the next item. Community Park mobile food vending. No, I've got my, is this the Access Social Site? Okay. I've got my reports in different order. Wait a minute. No, I'm looking at my agenda for this evening, and ERWS. Oh yeah. Well, my agenda. Yeah, I've got it, but it's in the wrong order. Okay. Yeah, because I've got 5C as community park. Oh, okay. I'm not going to argue. So we have the Access Oceanside Association website, and I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillors Powell. Mrs. Comas, please give us the background on this issue.
Yeah, sure. Access Oceanside Awareness or Association came before council requesting the city host their website for them, as the cost to them is about $135 a year. And they paid $160 for 5 years of hosting their domain name. The city of Parksville has not previously hosted websites for organizations, and there is a concern that if we were to approve this proposal, that we would then be opening the doors to be hosting many other organizations. And we just simply don't have the resources in-house to be able to do that. So staff have provided this report for information purposes, and if council were so inclined to want to assist Oceanside Awareness, they could perhaps direct them to the Grant and Aid program, where they could request a grant from council to support their website.
You know, being very knowledgeable and having sat on the committee prior to Councillor Patterson, I'm very impressed with this committee, and they do a lot of work. Councillor Patterson, you want to add?
My question may have been whether or not a link could have been put onto the city's webpage. They do have a link as well? Okay. What I'm finding with this group is that they're just, like myself, maybe not quite so technically challenged, or are technically challenged.
Me too.
Oh, so I think that what they're primarily looking for isn't necessarily the hosting, and that is just a little bit of help with some of their updating and linkages and that technical aspect of things. But Councillor Burton, I'm not sure if you've had a meeting with this group yet, so maybe you can chat.
Okay, so Councillor, I'm going to go to Councillor Salter, then I'm going to go to Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, two things. One is, when we go on to the city website as it is, you can go through, when you click on visitors, the visitors tab, and you can go down. It shows you all of the service providers that are in the city, and what places you can go, and things that are happening, what's going on. That is a link that is on the city site now. So my question is, what more what more did they want if it wasn't a website?
Mrs. Comas?
Or actually, I thought the question was.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Salter, when Deb Tardif spoke with them, what they were looking for was someone to host and manage their website, so that we would be updating their website for them. We would be hosting their website on our server and
doing that work for them.
We would be basically managing their website for
right, because we do have the link, and you could link through to their site.
Providing a link to their site
Yeah.
That's very simple. We provide links to all sorts of organizations, but the actual maintenance of their website
that's what they wanted.
Councillor Burton?
In preparation for my role as their new liaison, I met with the chair today and to clarify what it was that they were looking for, and Comas has nailed it. They want somebody to manage their site, and I've told them that my opinion is probably not going to support that. We would, as the report says, open ourselves to all sorts of other organizations wanting us to do the same thing, and I think that probably we can find them the support that they're looking for through other means.
Okay. have you got a suggestion on what they might do?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we not host their website.
Yeah, Your Worship, by
Okay,
receiving...
I'll make the receive. Yep.
Yeah, by adopting the motion to receive doesn't commit council to taking any action. And if council would like us to refer them to the grant and aid process where they could receive some funds to hire a local company, there's several local companies that actually do this type of work. And they could pay someone to do that for them.
$135 a year?
That's what they have told us.
Yeah.
They were quoted.
Councillor Oates.
I don't think that we should get into the business of hosting websites for any organization, so that's not on. But what I have heard on the radio on that 88.5 The Beach, where they do the call for the volunteers, and this sort of request is other organizations have looked for volunteers to do this type of work. What I understand is, yes, the Access Oceanside people are having difficulties with the technological end, but if somebody were technologically inclined, the amount of work that they would be generating wouldn't be a lot. They only have a little bit of stuff that they want up, and they want the ability to get it up first. So, I don't think the city can do it, but I believe that within the city of Parksville, if the request went out, I'm pretty sure somebody would step up and probably help them with that. And if not, then come back again, I guess. But I would not, I would not like to see this. I wouldn't want to see this organization fail because of a service that only costs $150 a year, whether or not the principle is we're getting in that business or not. But I hear that all the time where they're asking for volunteers. And one of the nursing homes had a volunteer looking for a painter to go up and paint the dementia unit into camouflage colors. So there are people in our community that may wish to do that. Yeah, that was in the paper. So I think that's what I would respectfully suggest to them, Kim, if they could talk to their volunteer guy at the beach there, maybe he can get them somebody.
Okay, so we're going to call the vote. That was just being received for information. All those in favor? Okay, that's done. So you'll take that back, Councillor Burton? And with all your contacts, I'm sure that'll be no problem. Thank you. Okay, now, going back to my report. You're going to recluse yourself, Councillor Burton. Councillor Patterson, you're going to recluse yourself, so we'll wait until you've left the room. It's a good thing your road wasn't blocked tonight. I'd be missing. We'd have to postpone it. Okay, this is the Community Park Mobile Food Vending policy for 2017 for the 2017 system. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Oates, seconded by Councillor Salter. Ms. Kaler, would you please give us the background on the issue regarding this Community Park Mobile Food Vending?
Mr. Mayor, in 2015, Council approved a lease agreement for 2 food truck pads in the community park. The intent at that time was to allow the use for a 2-year period and review it when the master plan for the community park was completed. As Council is aware, the park planning process is currently underway and will include an extensive community engagement component, which is expected to provide Council with more information on the issue of food concession services in the community park. At this time, staff is seeking direction from Council on the provision of food concession services through food trucks in the community park for the 2017 summer season. The existing Council policy is currently out of date and speaks to the permanent food concession that was formerly in the change room building, and staff recommendations are per the agenda.
Okay, any questions for Mrs. Kaler? Fairly straightforward. No questions? I'm going to call the. Oh, you have a question? All right.
Sorry, I have some questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so with regard to the food trucks, I just want to, my question isn't really about the, so I'm thinking there's around $18,000, $19,000 that's being received in rental income from those trucks. That's the expectation for 2017 based on 2016. So we've had that, so that would be twice. That's around 40,000. Where does those dollars go? Do they go into park, into the park fund, or do they go into general revenue?
They go into general revenue, Your Worship.
Okay.
Call the question if there's no other questions. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's carried. Well, that's correct English. There's no questions.
I'd just like to make this. This will all be contemplated again when we come to the community master plan. Well, I encourage the public to get out there and make their views known on the food trucks and the concession availability at the park. I believe that we could do much better than some food trucks.
I'd certainly like to see more variety. Okay, do you want to bring back our fellow councillors? Please. What, do we want to have a vote about whether leaving them out there or not bringing them back in? Thank you. Okay, welcome back, councillors. We are now on to bylaws. This is the final adoption of the 5-year financial plan amendment bylaw 2016-2020. That the 5-year financial plan amendment bylaw be reconsidered and finally adopted, signed by the mayor and corporate officer, and the corporate seal affixed thereto. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Powell. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Okay. And we could still deal with the earlier request in this context. That's the amended. Yeah, okay. We can deal with it. I just want to make sure it's not final. Okay, Councillor, we're moving on to new business. And if you'll permit me, I will, because I have a number of items I want to bring up, so I'll head it off and then I'll pass it and go around the table. First of all, we got a very big thank you from the NBA Games folk, and they had 19 universities across Canada that participated. Overall, the NBA Games 2017 raised $300,000, including matching funds from the J.W. McConnell Family Foundation for the new National Safe Space Place initiative, which supports violence prevention activities on university campuses across Canada. During this time, there was an award made at the NBA Games in the introduction of a new Spirit Award titled Titiwatul, and the name was granted by Uncle Gary, an elder within the Sinamux First Nations and at VIU. The meaning of the award is working together in spirit, and what a better way to communicate Canada's 150th year by creating a legacy trophy that will last and inspire NBA game delegates for years and years to follow. The panel event titled Reconciliation as a Call for Action, which took place on January the 4th at the Port Theatre in Nanaimo, was a huge success as it brought NBA leaders together to really understand towards what reconciliation means to them and to carry these conversations forward home to their respective cities all across Canada. Further, the Safe Place initiative along with the Reconciliation as a Call for Action has already created a movement in mobilizing leaders of our country to truly learn, understand, and participate in the importance in acknowledging traditional territories, but also challenging members to truly understand the history of this country. So we have an invitation from this group to attend. They're going to be having a special evening to attend the what did I do with that? I got mixed up in my papers tonight, Council. Please bear with me. I have all of that right here. Pardon me? No, it's probably my fault. But they're having we're all invited to an appreciation event that will be held on February 21st, 2017 at the Vancouver Island Conference Centre at 7 p.m. Light refreshments will be served, and this event will be recognizing our partners, which is us, for both games competitions, provincial and nationals, and affiliated members. So keep that in mind. If you can come, that would be great. What else do I have here? Bear with me, I will get organized. The Knox United Church has approached me to tell you and the audience out there in streaming land that they're having a project to raise money for a new church organ. And the tickets are $35. I have some tickets here for the Knox Organ Project. And this initiative is very important to the church, and it's a church that does receive a lot of groups that meet there. So I'm just going to leave that out there for you. If you're interested, see me for tickets. If those of you out there in streaming land want to know more about it, you can give me a call at the office. And I thought I was better organized. I even made notes, and I can't find my notes anymore. What did they do? Here they are. I want you to know, if you haven't already heard, that the residents of the Parksville and Qualicum Beach region will be growing more local food in 2017 as the Coombs Farmers Institute and their partners begin their Here We Grow project. This project, they were awarded $25,000, and the Coombs Farmers Institute, which was incorporated 103 years ago, it will be doing a lot of great work on that. The whole Grow Local program is funded in BC for 10 BC communities to the tune of $250,000, and I believe we get, we don't get that amount, we get a lot less than that, we get about 10% of that. So Janet Toney, who's a member of our economic development team, knows a lot more about that, so if you want to hear more about it, let me know. It should be on the, it's a news release put out by the Ministry of Agriculture, so we can read about that as time goes by. I attended the Robbie Burns dinner last Sunday. The pipe band was there, and we had some great entertainment from the Highland dancers, from little kids that were about 4 or 5 years old up to teenagers, and it was remarkable. It was really interesting to see how efficient how competent these dancers are. So if you ever get a chance to go and see some Highland dancing, I highly recommend it. Other than that, I'm going to ask that people remember out there that the deadline for grant and aid applications is March the 1st, 2017. So that'll be coming up at the end of the month. And I'm also, on behalf of the city, I'm going to be going to a mayor's caucus at the end of February. I think I've talked to council a little bit about that. I'll be talking more to you about it. The mayor's caucus has to do with inviting, this is part of a UBCM project, inviting the future leaders of the province after the election in May to come to talk to us about what they're doing and what our priorities are. One of the priorities I intend to bring on behalf of the RDN and the City of Parksville is a transportation plan for Vancouver Island. I'll talk more about it, and if you have any more suggestions that you want me to bring to this table, please do so. Pardon me? Well, it includes everything. Ferry boats and everything else. So I'm going to start this evening on my left. Councillor Patterson, any new business?
I don't really have any new business, Your Worship, but if you'll bear with me, I just wanted to say a couple things. In our community in the last week or so, we've had some deaths in our community, some tragedies. Thank you, Councillor Oates. And I just, my heart goes out to a lot of the families and company and that are involved. And our weather is a bit of a challenge at this time of year for a lot of residents, and I think we just need to be aware and slow down sometimes. And I applaud the city on the roads and traffic safety that has been done. So I wanted to mention that. And on a couple other little notes, Chesapeake Shores, which was filmed 2 years ago, is going to be returning to our area. There will be a speaker at the Qualicum Beach Community Awards from Chesapeake Shores next week. So just putting that out there. That's a really positive economic feedback in our area. And then on just a little bit on youth, we have some great sports and arts youth in our community, and it's just amazing. From the aquatic side of things to Bolinas. I think that sometimes we just have to think about and take pride, and I always do whenever I'm in other areas of the world, and I just wanted to take a moment and recognize that right now.
You know, coming back to your first point, having lived for many, many years with 5 or 6 months of winter, the answer is to go slow. You've got to go slow. You can't be driving fast in wintertime like we do in the summer.
Thank you, Worship. A couple of things, sort of related and not related. I did attend a staff appreciation on Friday night, and it was just so appropriate that staff appreciation night happened on the night of a snowstorm. It was really nice to the guys that when your guys came in from the street to give them to take some supper with themselves and then go back out again, that the crowd there recognized them and gave them a round of applause. And I just want to say I appreciate the efforts of the staff that they've done in clearing the snow. And, you know, a reminder to people that we are in a community, our demographics are a little older. Check on your neighbor, help your neighbor. You know, it doesn't take very long to go over and do a little bit of snow shoveling. That stuff is very, very heavy, and your neighbors really appreciate it. And my neighbor is quite a good baker, too. On another note, AVICC is coming up. Since I've been on council, the City of Parksville hasn't brought forward any formal recommendations to AVICC, nor have we sat down and talked about any of the resolutions that we're aware of that are coming forward. I would be interested in us making a more concentrated effort this year at AVICC. If we are not in the position where we have any resolutions or anything to take forward, I think we should have some pretty firm stances on some of the items that are coming forward. I've been reading that out of Victoria there's a recommendation or a possibility of implementing taxes on derelict properties and vacant properties. I think that's something that we as a council should take a position on, as well as the other resolutions. But, you know, we are partners and we pay into that and we go to those. And while we participate fully while we're there, I wouldn't mind putting a little bit of a Parksville stamp on that.
I did send to members of council last week, I believe, the items that the RDN will be sending to AVICC. Hope you all received that. If you didn't, let me know. And one of the big issues is the transportation plan for Vancouver Island, and that's something that I'll have a lot to say about. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Worship. I have attended 2 meetings this week, or one last week and one this week. One for the Parksville Downtown Business Association. On the table were the wayfinding, the core field upgrade, and a meeting with staff. And also we talked about the Christmas light up. Lots of positive feedback about that. The event is getting bigger. It's more organized. There was concerns about the big tree. A lot of people were disappointed in the lights. They seem like they're not there. So maybe we can light that up a little bit more next year. I don't know. I'm looking right at you, Mike. And then I was at the Chamber of Commerce meeting on Thursday of this week, and they're going to have their AGM in April. What's the date? Second Thursday in April. And they're gearing up their Canada celebrations. As everyone knows, it's 150 years. I'm not going to try and say, how do you say it? Sesquicentennial. Yeah, Sasquatch Centennial. Anyway, so it's going to be a big celebration. They're still working on the logistics of it and what it's going to look like. Staff appreciation, my apologies. I was stranded in Duncan, couldn't get back. I hope everybody had a good time. Sorry I missed it. That's it.
Okay, and thank you for bringing that up about the evening of the celebration on Friday night. I guess I'm so down about the snow that I forget certain things. I hate the snow. Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a couple things. There's a group that are trying to, they're building the railway, and they're trying to refurbish the railway from actually Parksville to Port Alberni. And so what they'd like to do is, and they are looking for dollars. I'm sure they'll, at some point come here, but what they're looking to do is just get funding so that they can upgrade that piece of the railway. And they say that they've discussed that already with Island Corridor and so on. And their plan is to use, I can't remember what they're called, those things. You know what I mean? Speeders. Yeah, they've got speeders, and they've also got a steam train that they want to use to come up and down the railway from Parksville. So it would be a tourist thing. Anyway, I'm just tossing that out there. So I was talking to him. I actually talked to them last year when we were at AVCC in Nanaimo, and they're going to be up at Coombs at Family Day at the Fall Fairgrounds. So if anybody wants to go up and get any further information, they'll be there, and they're more than willing to talk to anybody that's interested. So just putting that out there. I'm interested. I think it's a great idea. The next thing is the Garden Society down here that have the community garden. They're saying that there's cottonwood trees down there that are quite large, and their concern is that they're going to come down. So I know that you were a little bit aware of that.
I passed that on.
Yeah,
at least I think
you
I
passed
did.
it on to me to bring up. So
That's what I did.
here I am, and so I'm not quite even sure who to bring it up to. I don't know what we can do about that. Does someone look into it to see whether or not the trees are safe? I don't know. Mr. Squire?
Certainly, through your worship, you can request a request for service, and then operations will take action, and we have an arborist on staff that can assess them. And depending where the tree is, if it's on city property or not on city property, then we can assess the liability based on that as well.
I'd like to request a request for service.
If you could please send it to me.
I'll send it to you. Okay, perfect. I'll do that.
Did I not send it to you also? Oh,
No, you sent it to me.
sorry.
You sent it to me. So, yeah, so that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Councillor Burton.
I also had the pleasure of attending the staff appreciation dinner. Thank you very much. It was great, and I have some notes that need my fingerprint. Maybe not. There we go. I did post something on Facebook, which is something I really rarely do because I like to stay anonymous, about the fantastic job that the city crews have done in maintaining and keeping our streets clear during the snowstorm. And when I was out tooling around doing my chores on Saturday, I saw all kinds of people on sidewalks with shovels, and the most amazing one was the guy shoveling the length of sidewalk on Craig Street where the Parksville Elementary School is. I just thought, that is... Nobody owns that. That's school board property. He didn't look like a school board worker. I was impressed, and have had the opportunity to drive through Nanoose and Nanaimo over the last 24 hours. Our crews have, pardon me? I had to go into Nanaimo out again to retrieve a couple of fellows from a Super Bowl party yesterday, and make sure they had a safe ride home. So, but our streets are amazing, okay? They're clear, they're good. In comparison to the jurisdictions around us, I've heard reports from Area F, Area H, Area E that maybe they're not so good. So I'd like to make sure that that gets passed on to the people responsible, okay? Last meeting I brought up a point around the way in which financial requests are made outside of the grants and aid program. And I think everybody's aware that I have some difficulty with the way those requests come forward. So I took down some notes, and I'd like to make a motion that staff develop criteria for special financial requests that come forward outside of the grant and aid program. And I'd like to, the criteria to include outlining the urgency of the request and why it can't be included in the regular grants and aid program. I'd like it to outline the specific uses of taxpayer funds associated with the request. I'd like to look at the eligibility of the organization or individual requesting funding. And I'd like some general information about the organization or individual, including, at a minimum, their current year budget and full financial statements for the operations, and noting any other sources of funding. In addition, if we're going to continue, so I think that's probably, thank you. I'm not quite done yet. No, I've talked about it, but I've got another piece that I'd like to add when we finish.
Put that under you're talking about it. Okay, go ahead.
Let me put it out there, and then you can tell me whether it needs to be part of it. I think it might need two motions. So I'd also like to tie it to I'd like to tie the council contingency and the grants and aid program together through using any excess funds from the council contingency at the end of a budget year. I'd like to add those into the grants and aid program. So if the 2017 grant and aid fund is $2,500 and the council contingency for 2017 is $25,000, and we spend $20,000 out of the council contingency fund, then I'd like to add $5,000 to the grants and aid program to make it a total of $7,500.
I think that's another motion. That's another motion.
I think it's another motion, and that's why I left it at that point.
Let's deal with the first motion. Okay, Councillor Oates.
Okay, so with respect to the first motion, what I understand the criteria in general terms that you're looking at is why is it urgent, the appropriateness of the request coming to council, the eligibility of the proponent, and the financial situation that the proponent is in.
That's correct.
Councillor Powell.
So how would you determine eligibility?
That's why I'm asking staff to take this
Develop it?
and develop something.
So is that...
So what you're talking about really is an ad. Somebody would come before council out of the blue as a delegation and say, I need money. So they'd have to be given that form that night and say, go back, fill it out, and get it back to us ASAP if they wanted the money really, really quickly. That's correct.
My issue and my problem is that we're dispensing taxpayer funds on the basis of a letter, a one-pager in some instances. And I just think that's poor stewardship, and I'd like something more.
An ad hoc request. Councillor Salter.
So it's my understanding that we actually did have red tape in the past, and it was pared down so that we didn't have that red tape, so that when someone had something that was emergent, so an emergent issue, an immediate need, then without a cumbersome process, they were able to come to council, and council would make that decision. This sounds to me like we're going to ask staff to make that decision. They're going to look it over. They're going to decide whether it's going to come to us.
It would come. Staff wouldn't make the decision. No. Council would make the decision.
With some criteria.
So if there's an emergent need, then it would go to staff first, and then it would come to council?
No, what would happen was if there's an emergency, the proponent would be prevented with the package. Say, fill this out and get it back to us right away, so council can make a decision. Okay. Councillor Oates.
I see that just slightly a little bit different. I see it as if we adopted this, there is nothing that prevents somebody from coming before council on any given night and making a request. Nothing in the world prevents this. What this would do would give us the ability to say, hold on, this is not an emergent. This better fits in this category based on this criteria. And if it fits in that, then you hive it off to that appropriate format. If it doesn't, then we deal with it here as a council that particular night. Right? That for us to determine whether or not it's but for me, all of the other things are things that are already contemplated in the grant and aid. The urgency is the piece that that I think is the most important here. So you know, if it comes before us, then we can make the determination whether or not it's urgent. How do we make that determination? Based on the criteria of the of whatever comes back from staff, whether or not it's like that. I like that a little better. I'm with you, Councillor Salter. I don't want to put in back more red tape because I don't want to shut off the ability of people to come here. But I do think there's times when emergency for one person may not be an emergency for everybody. So that might give us the ability to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Worship. I think that we ask the grant and aid people to do just what we're asking people to come that request money. We've already got that in place. And it also provides, I agree with Councillor Councillor Burden, Councillor Burden, that it is just making people accountable. You know, oftentimes we give more money to somebody their one-time request than we do with the grants and aids. And they have this whole thing that they have to follow. So absolutely, I support this.
Okay, Mrs. Comas, you have a comment?
Yes, Your Worship. In terms of developing the criteria, a few years ago, Council directed staff to prepare new criteria for the grants because there was a point in time when Council didn't request any financial information with respect to grant requests. It was simply a letter to the Grant and Aid Committee saying, this is the organization, this is what we want to do, and here's how much money we would like to have. So we now require financial statements and budgets and full. So just to be clear, you would like that same kind of information for anyone who comes before Council to receive that information from staff to provide that this is what's required that Council will need for the agenda, and we will place that on the agenda when they come forward with their request.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Councillor Salter.
It's not what I'm hearing when I'm listening to Councillor Oates. What I'm hearing you say is people can still come here. If there's an emergent need, they could still come to Council and they could request that emergent need. But then when I'm hearing Mrs. Comas, I'm hearing, well, no, they're going to fill out this form. They're going to come. We're going to put it on the agenda, and we're going to see to it that way. So I'm confused because I'm hearing two separate things here. I have an emergency. I have an emergent need. I believe it's an emergent need. What do I do? What do I do now? I think it's emergent. I want to come to Council. What happens? What's your picture?
So the current situation requires people to go to staff to get something put on the agenda. Yes. All I'm asking is for some additional documentation to go along with those requests so that we can be better stewards of taxpayer dollars.
I think where maybe your concern is that there may be somebody coming to Council a couple of months before the grants and aid said I have a problem and I have an emergency. Council will retain the flexibility at that time to either have them complete. You know, we could say on the same evening, here, fill this out and get it back to us tomorrow morning if it comes out of the blue or if it comes on as a request on a letter. Or we could say, no, we're going to give you the money tonight because we understand the concern and the complexity. So we'll still retain that flexibility.
There is flexibility, and Council is still going to make those decisions, but they're going to make the decisions based on a greater degree of information.
Councillor Oates.
So let's talk about what gave rise to this. What gave rise to this was a letter that came to Council requesting an amount of money. And notwithstanding what the letter to the editor said, there was contact made with that group. That group was made aware of it coming before Council on whatever date it was, our last Council meeting. And in fact, the proponent said it's not urgent anymore. Qualicum Beach has already stepped up. So, you know, that sort of information is the kind of information that I believe Councillor Burden would like to have on the table that night when that request comes through. Because when it comes through as an urgent request, with a letter that was dated sometime the 20th of December, and then you get another email shortly after that from the same group saying, no, it's not that urgent, that sort of information should be in front of council for us to make our decisions. And that information was available. That information is the information that if you talk to the manager of communications, you would have got a copy of the email from the group saying, it ain't urgent anymore. We'll talk to you in January. Right? So.
Okay. I'm going to call the vote. All right? All those in favor? Opposed? You opposing?
Sorry. And so that question is, if someone believes it's an emergent issue, and they come to, let's say they come to our mayor, and so then the mayor will, I just want to be sure, you're going to then send them to staff, who will have them fill out forms, and then we will.
Well, it doesn't have to be. It could be anybody. I think what would happen is if somebody writes me a letter. Let's say somebody writes me a letter 5 days before the next council meeting, and wants that letter put on the agenda requesting money. That person would automatically be given a small package to fill out.
Okay.
So we could discuss it at the night of the meeting. Councillor Rowe.
That does not eliminate the possibility, though, that if someone sends a letter to the mayor, which is distributed to council because it gets sent to all the council, request for funding, that any councillor can come and put forward a motion at that meeting for that request for funding. There's no problem with any of us doing that. There's nothing, and I'm not supporting anything that restricts my ability to advocate on part of the taxpayers. So if we got the last one we got, it was an issue of urgency. Council was made aware of it. We weren't having a meeting coming up to deal with it, and we chose not to call an emergency meeting. So somehow we made the decision that it wasn't an emergency. In the future, we could make the decision that a request is an emergency. I don't see this. I certainly do not support anything that puts up barriers to the public, but I certainly do support anything that makes us more accountable with how we're doling out the taxpayers' money. So I see this as just just a variation on what we have right now and just making people a little more accountable. That's what I see. I don't see it as putting up any barriers. If it does put up any barriers, I guarantee I'll come back with motions to remove those barriers.
Okay, do you want to make another motion?
Okay.
We did. We just voted. It passed.
We voted it. We passed it. Thank you. So if we're going to continue to dispense funding from the council contingency fund, and if as a result of separating urgent requests from requests made in haste, there's an increase in requests to the grant and aid program, we need to create a way to assist in funding those referrals to the grant and aid program. So what I'm proposing is that we take any surplus over the course of a budget year that the council contingency fund may have, so any unspent monies in the council contingency fund, I'm suggesting we transfer that to the grants and aid program for the coming year, because the grants and aid program, $2,500 is a joke, okay? Was it 5? Awesome. It's still not enough based on what I see in my short time here that has come through this other route. So I'm suggesting that we find a way to build the grants and aid program without adding to the budget, merely transferring from one budget to another.
Can we do that, Mrs. Comas? We can do that? Okay. Comments? Wait a minute. You're making that motion then? Can you make that more succinct?
You bet. I'd like to move that we take the surplus from the council contingency fund over a budget year, transfer it to the grants and aid program for the following year.
I have a seconder for that, seconded by Councillor Powell. Discussion on the motion.
So,
you want to second it?
yeah, I'll second
I need
it.
a second.
I second it. So I have a question through you to the CAO. When we do not spend all the money in our contingency fund, don't we just start at the regular $25,000 the next year?
Yes, you do.
So we don't carry anything over?
No, you don't carry anything over, but we have the ability within our budget process to do what we call carryovers. And so basically, once year end is done and we know what funds are left, what I'm hearing, when we know what funds are left, for instance, I think this year there was $3,000 left in council contingency. So that $3,000 would just be, that would go into the accumulated surplus.
Right.
So what I'm hearing council ask is that instead of going into the accumulated surplus, it would just get added into the grants and aid budget. So then that $3,000 would be split between the spring and the fall and would augment the funds that we regularly budget.
Wasn't there also a time that we went over our $25,000 budget?
Yes, there was.
By about $3,000?
Yes,
so
there was.
It levels itself out. I won't support this.
I just want to remind everybody that as your RDN representative, and I happen to be on the RDN Grants and Aid this year, I advise the Grants and Aid staff portion of the program of who's received grants and aid, because there's people from Parksville and Oceanside that apply, and so what I don't allow, what we haven't been allowing as a city is we haven't been allowing double dipping, simply because we have to provide. Out of our RDN budget comes the grants and aid, so I want to make sure that that stays pure in the sense that we don't do any double dipping. So you can be assured that happens. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a seconder. I'm going to call the vote unless there's any further discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Okay. All right. Anything else, Councillor Burton? You get your surplus anyway. It all goes into the general revenue fund. Okay. Yes, Kirk.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention it earlier, but I think it's noteworthy that we now have an operating agreement with the PCCC. I think that just to have that read in the record, that we do now have an operating agreement with the community center, and we wish them much luck in achieving their goals.
Are we, by the way, Councillor Oates, can you find out, are we due a report for the end of fiscal year 2016? Thank you. Okay. Councillor Patterson.
I'm sorry, Your Worship, since we've kind of gone back around the table on that again, can I just bring up the District 69 Recreation Services Master Plan? And it's scheduled for the latter part of February is a resident survey that will be mailed out and available online to all District 69 residents. So it consists of 23 questions, so don't throw it away when you get it in the mail. And that's
Thank you for that. That's important, yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Any other business? Motion to adjourn by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Salter. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Anybody opposed?
What was the last?